session
Mr.
for
Mayor?
Tuesday, February.
Mr. Mayor, I'm gonna put your microphone on.
I'm about as bad as Alderman Baggett there, just stumbling around. You'll notice that he's not on the end. He got here early. Well, welcome to the work session for the Board of Mayor Alderman. We're starting a little early today because we've added on some special time to talk about some things we wanted to talk about. So I'm going to call the meeting to order, and we're going to call the roll. We'll start out with Alderman Barnhill. Present. Vice Mayor Blanton. Here. Alderman Hanson.
Here.
Alderman Peterson. Here. Alderman Berger.
Here.
Alderman Brown.
Here.
Alderman Potts.
Here.
And Alderman Baggett.
Present.
Yeah, great. We've got everybody here. So now's an opportunity for citizens to make comments on items that are not on the agenda. I don't have any speaker cards, and I don't see anybody rushing up here. So we'll continue to move forward, and we'll go next to item 1, which is consideration of special events permit for the Eat the Street Food Truck Festival at Bicentennial Park on May the 6th.
This is an event that's been going on for some time. Again, in the Bicentennial Park area, we close off Martin Luther King Avenue to help that happen. About 8,000 people come to that each year, so it should be a nice event, and looking forward to having it back again this May.
We'll keep moving forward, and go ahead, Alderman Peterson.
If you look on some of them, it says the streets thing is like in August, on a couple of things.
Oh, on the application? Okay, yeah. We'll make sure that's in line with the May 6th event.
Okay, item 2 is presentation and update of the Cumberland River Compact and City of Franklin Partnership. And coming on up, and this has been a good partnership for us, and we're eager to welcome everybody.
One of the things we do is really focus on our ability to be great stewards of the environment, especially as it relates to our river, but overall in the community. And having an advocate, a partner that works in that space as an environmental advocate is a great partner to have to help us both educate and identify the way we can work better with citizens and help our community be in a better place. So we're proud of this partnership and wanted to give you sort of some feedback on how it's been going and the work that's been going on. I think Brittany's taken the lead from the city staff standpoint, and then we have our other partners here as well. And Mark, do you have anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to introduce Brittany Perez. She works in our stormwater division in engineering. She doesn't often get to see you, Brittany. Board.
Hi.
And
Nice to meet you.
she'll be introducing our lovely partners here with the Cumberland River Compact. So thank you.
Like Mark said, my name is Brittany Perez, and I'm a water quality specialist with Stormwater Management. And I'm the main point of contact for this partnership that we have with Cumberland River Compact. It's been a really great partnership. It's been initiated since 2019. We are in our third year, second quarter of it, and they've been doing some really good things around Franklin. So we wanted to spend some time to introduce you guys to this partner and some of the projects that they've been doing.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for the time on your agenda tonight. My name is Mikhail Houghton, and I'm Executive Director of the Cumberland River Compact. And we're an environmental nonprofit that was founded in 1997 with the mission to enhance the health and enjoyment of the Cumberland River and its tributaries. And yep. So the Cumberland River Basin, fun fact, if you don't remember anything else, is considered the third most biodiverse freshwater region in the world, along with the Tennessee River and Alabama. So it's there's a lot to work for, and currently about 3 million people depend on fresh water from the Cumberland River and its tributaries, and of course the Harpeth watershed flows into the Cumberland River. So we are working on up and down the Cumberland River Basin. You can see the basin itself up on the screen with the gold star is Franklin. So it starts in Harlan, Kentucky, the river, and flows into Tennessee, and then meets up with the Ohio River around Paducah. So 2/3 of the basin is in Tennessee and 1/3 is in Kentucky. Next slide, please. So our work, we have a staff of 12 and plus 5 AmeriCorps. Our work focuses on water quality education, stream restoration, urban waters, and sustainable agriculture. And the work is targeted to the root causes of water pollution. And we do our work with lots and lots of people. So, I think unique among us as an environmental organization is we're very people focused. We like to work with people. We like to build systems that work for people. So, next slide, please. Next slide. Let's see, does it advance? Will it advance? Oh, yours will? Okay, great. Well, so there you see the Harpeth River watershed and the streams, and the city is on the right. That's an aerial view of the city. And then on the next slide, this just gives you a brief summary. The partnership started in July of 2019 after conversations with Mayor Moore and the stormwater department, and an initial partnership preceded that on some stream cleanups. And so, obviously it was an odd time to start a partnership. We hit 2020 pretty quickly after that, and we're able to take a lot of the programming virtual. And so Catherine Price is with me today, and she's in charge of the Cumberland River Compact's outreach and education, and she's going to hit a couple highlights for you, and then we'll be open to any questions you all might have about the partnership.
Great, thank you so much. So, as Mikhail said, I just want to highlight some of the successes that we've had since the project has started in 2019. So, next slide, please. So I'm going to touch on a few of the different programs that we have, our stream adoption and stewardship program, our special events and outreach that we've worked on within the city, stewardship to local schools and watershed education, working with HOAs and local businesses, and then some of the more restoration-focused work that we've done on rain gardens and building what's called a watershed-based plan. So next slide. So first we'll start with our Adopt a Stream program. And so this program, we've been able to engage a lot of new partners in the city of Franklin. We are currently identifying a lot of new sites that can use a little extra stewardship. And so we're working to then identify the community groups, whether it's neighborhoods or partners or communities that can adopt that. So far with the program, we've had 6 stream adopters, engaged about 43 volunteers, and removed over 70 bags of trash. And then when we consider our special events and outreach, this was something that was definitely more difficult with 2020, but we have been able to continue to engage in some new events. So this includes participating in events like Pumpkin Fest, and then creating some opportunities for residents in Franklin to engage with biodiversity through something called the City Nature Challenge. So getting outside, finding out about what lives in their community. We've also done a lot of informational presentations, both virtually, and then just about 2 weeks ago, we had a presentation with residents at the Williamson County Library that was focused on Franklin's water and things that they could do to get involved. Then the next slide is one of our favorite events that we've had, which was our Water Week. And this happened in May of 2021, and this was really focused on engaging with the businesses in the downtown corridor as well as across Franklin. So we were able to provide information, themes for each day that focused on something we were excited about, encouraging residents to do or learn about, and then got businesses to engage either by participating on social media. So you'll see a photo from Burger Up. They were one of our favorites. They took all of our themes and added their own Burger Up flair to it, which was so fun to see throughout the week. We also hung posters in downtown businesses. So we had about 51 businesses that participated either with the physical outreach of having a poster or virtually and digitally. And we're able to reach about 6,500 residents through social media and 14,000 through special email blasts. Then you'll see information about our stewardship programs to local schools. So this is one that we have been able to continue to offer both in person and virtually a little bit last year as well, engaging with high school and elementary school students. We've actually got a presentation coming up in about a week and a half, and then another one hopefully at the end of March as well. And then within outreach to HOAs and local businesses, this has been something that has been really important for us in this partnership and working on, providing information and being an asset to these groups. So we've done specific presentations to businesses like Nissan, participated in the Frank Talks program, and recently reached out to about 73 different neighborhood and HOA contacts with information, including a blog post that had all of this information about how they could get involved and learn more about their waterways they could share with the residents of their communities. And then finally, focusing on our restoration-based work, these are two examples of rain gardens, which are in Bicentennial Park. So rain gardens they help to slow down and naturally absorb rainwater runoff that might be coming after a large storm, help soak that into the ground and make the water that's entering into a waterway cleaner. And so we work to retrofit 2 of these rain gardens so far by adding new plants, kind of mulching, cleaning up. They need a little bit of love and maintenance, so that's something we've been able to do. And then finally, in partnership with the city, we've been working on a watershed-based plan. What this is it's a more technical document that really allows us to focus in on what is happening with waterways in the area. And then by creating that plan, identifying some of the opportunities and challenges in the region, then we can, it opens up funding opportunity for us in partnership with the city. So that plan was approved at the end of 2021 by the Tennessee Department of Agriculture. So I will close there. This was our workshop from earlier, but we do hope that you all can stay connected to us, learn more about what we've been working on, and happy to answer any questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Good presentation. Good partnership. Questions? Go ahead, Alderman Brown.
I'm just curious, have there been any neighborhoods that have taken you up on the offer to come and present? And what are those neighborhoods? I'm just curious.
That outreach happened about 2.5 weeks ago, kind of in preparation for that workshop. So we haven't had any that have signed up for doing a presentation. So we've been able to have some of those members come to that workshop in person, which was great because then they're able to get that information and go home with that and share that information with their residents. Mm-hmm.
Anybody else?
If I may, sir.
Go
So
ahead.
they had highlighted Franklin Water Week from last year, which was a hugely popular event. And I think we're going to attempt to turn this into an annual thing, is my understanding, right? So we'll be coming before you all here in the near future and talk about that again. So thank
Good.
you all.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, let's do items 3, 4, and 5 together. Ordinance 2021-52 to rezone 3.56 acres from Regional Commerce District to Plan PD, property located north of Cool Springs called Legends View, and also the development plan for Legends View, and then the Parkland impact fee. So,
Thank you. The plan proposes 18 multifamily dwelling units and about 3,800 square feet of commercial space at the location of 201 Cool Springs Boulevard, fairly close to the Mac Hatcher intersection with Cool Springs. And it is located in the Regional Commerce Design Concept and Envision Franklin. New multifamily is encouraged within this design concept, and for Regional Commerce, Envision Franklin recommends high-activity uses such as retail are encouraged on the first floor, with uses such as offices and residential on the second floors and above. Site design should integrate seamless pedestrian connectivity across the site and other uses. This plan does have the 2 buildings at the front of the property have commercial use on the ground floor, and then 2 units for residents above. Also, the parking garage or the parking area is contained entirely within a structure underneath the whole development, so it really encourages pedestrian connectivity within the development. There are some additional comments from our fire department regarding access to the site during an emergency event. So there are additional requirements to satisfy those conditions, and that full list can be found in Condition 7. But overall, staff recommends approval of the plan, as does Planning Commission. So happy to answer any questions.
Everybody happy?
And on the parkland impact, they're building some of the trail system.
Yeah. Good, thank you, Joey. Item 6 is Resolution 2021-183, approving a revised development plan for Carruthers Crossing West PUD subdivision, property located north of Liberty Pike and west of Carruthers Parkway, establishing a public hearing March 8th, 2022. Did I just take all your thunder?
Pretty much. No, I'm just kidding. No, but the gist of this development plan revision is to allow use of daycare on the site. The plan was vested under an ordinance that requires any change in institutional uses to be re-reviewed and approved by the BOMA. And in that vested ordinance, daycare is considered an institutional use. The plan, as shown, does meet the zoning ordinance requirements for how it's located on the site and how parking is provided, et cetera, et cetera. So happy to answer any questions.
Item 7, Resolution 2021-179, a resolution amending the Avalon Square PUD subdivision to extend the vesting rights for the property located at the intersection of Cool Springs Boulevard and East McEwen Drive, establishing a public hearing March the 8th. Go ahead.
All right. So if you remember at a previous work session, we talked about vested rights and what those mean and how it means to extend those vested rights. Essentially, when a project is approved by this board, it obtains vested rights, which means the municipal level regulations in place at the time are what govern the project throughout the course of its development. It does give a certain time period for which the development has to complete itself by, and there are milestones it has to hit along the way to retain that vesting. So with Avalon Square, they're requesting an extension of that first milestone. They would need an additional 3 years to secure the approval of a site plan, secure permits, and begin site preparation. They've run into some hurdles. There's also a issue with the South Prong Interceptor that has been trying to be resolved through capacity issues that's been they're working with the city with. But anyway, those are some of the hurdles that they faced. So they would like to extend their vested rights to continue the project they're ready to begin very soon. So in terms of if they did not get their vested rights approved, and they would have to come back to this board to have a complete re-review of the plan still generally meets the ordinances in place today. They would still need modification of standards that they had previously requested, and again, staff would most likely support the ones that you approved and not support the ones you did not approve. And they would still have to work with the city to work on the sewer extension, but again, they're working on that now. So
Okay.
happy to answer any questions.
Alderman Berger?
Yes, I would definitely support this because the sewer issue needs to be worked out with them. And also, their plans, they've met numerous times with the residents in that area who have really liked their plans and the things that they have proposed. Also, I just hate to see people go back to square one, especially the last 2 years, going through all the stuff with COVID. They've also trying to secure people to come into that site, to be present in there and to build in there. And you know how it all's been going down for 2 years. So people are having problems with that. We need to give them a little grace with that. So I would definitely support this.
Go ahead, Mr. Barnhill.
Do we give different times to different applicants as far as extensions are concerned, or is it a standard time that?
It's not a standard time. It's applicant driven. They request the extension. The vesting legislation they give time frames where once you have a plan approved, you have 3 years to obtain a site plan for that development, secure permits, and begin site prep, which just means start putting the infrastructure into the site. Then if you meet that milestone, vesting legislation says that in an additional 2 years, you must begin vertical construction. And then, depending on if it's a single phase or a multi-phase project, you have to complete the project within a total of 10 years or 15 years. So the vesting extension doesn't extend that overall time frame. They're just saying, we need a little bit more time to get that first milestone met. and they're suggesting that it be 3 years. I think part of it is that staff advises them to make sure they ask for enough time so that they don't have to come back to you. So they felt that 3 years was appropriate.
Go ahead, Alderman Brown.
I'm sorry, just, but that doesn't change the overall. They're still within a 10 or 15-year window.
Right, they're a multi-phase, so they would be within a 15-year window. Now, you know, I guess it's their prerogative to come back to extend that again, but as of now, this first extension doesn't extend the overall timeline.
Any other questions? The applicant is here if you have any questions for him. So, item 8 is consideration resolution 2021-180, a resolution initiating the annexation process, draft plan of services for annexation of 5.03 acres located at 4321 Long Lane. Establish a public hearing March 8th.
Thank you. Just for context, this property is immediately south of where the Refuge Center will be constructed in the near future. And 4325, which is just adjacent to this property, was annexed into the city this last year. So currently on the property is a single-family residence. The current owner would like to be annexed into the city and reuse the building, turn it into a small educational facility for a Montessori school or academy. And Envision Franklin places this into the regional commerce concept, and that stipulates that intensive uses should transition from the interstate to closer where the established subdivisions and neighborhoods are. So an institutional use here would coincide with the recommendations of Envision Franklin. There is a draft plan of services included for you to review. There are no major concerns or issues to really bring up or discuss here. Pretty close to established city services and within our UGB as well. Happy to answer any questions.
Alderman Barnhill.
I hope this is a correct question, but the ownership is the same as it was when we were going through the refuge and approving the refuge. Is the ownership the same here? Is the same property owner?
Please come on up and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Alderman, I'm the president ex officio of the Montessori School of Franklin, and so we purchased this property and closed at the end of November. So we're just like you said, we're a very tiny little Montessori school, and the 5 acres just serves our purpose absolutely fantastically for kind of a natural education environment. So we purchased the property from the Ross family who sold that to us, and now we're the owner as of November.
I don't have any other questions. You can get in and out of the site, and you've got all of that. It's the same driveway that he used for his house, and this is, okay.
Alderman Peterson.
I guess the one question, and this is to staff really, not to you, about Refuge Center hasn't decided on where they're going to get the sewer through, is that right? But once they do, then this would not be a problem.
The Refuge Center has submitted a site plan, so that's currently tracking through our review process. I can't speak specifically to the sewer line, but that should be addressed with this review.
So would you tap onto that line then? Or do you even know which direction it's going?
We do. We have our engineers looking at the best route. If you, in the comments that he was referring to, talking about approximately 2,700 feet of sewer service. One of the deals that we were going through during due diligence is the awareness that we would need to provide sewer service to the building. So we've gone through that, and we have those contractors identified, engineers identified. We're just kind of getting through this process. And we've been working closely with our neighbors who have actually extended a welcoming arm, a little contrary to probably the prior discussions with the environment there. But yeah, we're excited about it. The neighbors are excited about it. The service that we're bringing to the Ladd Farm area. We're pretty jazzed up. Obviously, it's in your district, Alderman Potts. We're pretty stoked, and I'm sure we're going to be excited to see you during the ribbon cutting, as well as Mr. Mayor, if you'll please come. The kids have just been talking about how excited that would be, so I'm going to hold you guys to that.
Glad to be there if the schedule permits.
And the plan of service process will help us answer those questions in a little more detail too. So this just gets that process rolling.
And staff is recommending approval. I think I forgot to say that, so just for the record. Yeah.
You wanted the dramatic
Yeah.
part at the end.
Okay, any other questions? None, we'll keep moving. Item 9 is Resolution 2022-08, a resolution to support restoring the historic revenue sharing relationship between the state of Tennessee and its local governments, and to return to the local share of the single article cap to local governments.
So I believe we're going to show you a short video, but I'll tee it up a little bit. This is some advocacy work that's going on through the Tennessee Municipal League and cities across Tennessee. There's been a historic relationship between the sales tax that the state collects and a small percentage that is shared back to cities based on their population. And that was modified in the early 2000s, in 2002, when the state was in a fiscal crisis. And these two elements were used at that time to help close that financial gap. We're in a much different financial situation as a state, thank goodness, here in 2022. And really what TML and cities across the state are asking is to go back and look at that long-term relationship that had been in place for 55 years. And how do we look at that? And how does that help cities deliver on the service requirements and needs of their community? And also in terms of especially the single article piece, which we'll talk a little bit more about at the end here, that also relates to the funding, additional funding that can go to local schools as well. So we'll show you this. It's about 3 minutes or so of information from TML, Tennessee Municipal League, and then maybe share a few more details from there and then answer any questions you have.
In 1947, the state began sharing 4.6% of all sales tax revenues designated for its general fund with municipalities. This was done in recognition of their contributions to the state's economic health and vitality and of the burden borne by city taxpayers to fuel the state's economy. From 1947 to 1991, the state increased its sales tax rate on 5 separate occasions. In each instance, the additional revenues associated with this rate increase were designated for the state's general fund. And, in each instance, the sharing arrangement created in 1947 was preserved, with the state continuing to share 4.6% of all of its state sales tax collections with municipalities. Then, in 1993, the state increased the sales tax rate a 6th time, from 5.5% to 6%. However, unlike prior increases, the additional revenues associated with this 0.5% increase were not designated for the state's general fund. Instead, the portion of state sales tax collections attributable to the 93 increase were earmarked to fund the newly developed Basic Education Plan, or BEP. Despite this change, the historical sharing arrangement between the state and municipalities was preserved, as the state continued to share 4.6% of all state sales tax revenue designated for the general fund. In 2002, the state faced a severe budget shortfall and enacted a combination of budget reductions and revenue increases to balance the state's budget. Among the revenue measures adopted was an increase in the state sales tax rate from 6% to 7%. As with the increases adopted prior to 93, the associated revenues were designated for the state general fund. However, unlike the prior increases, the state elected not to share these general fund revenues with municipalities. Instead, the state chose to keep 100% of the revenues derived from the 1% increase for itself, so that it could close the budget shortfall and avoid fiscal calamity. In doing so, the state broke its 55-year sharing arrangement with cities and towns. Now, nearly 20 years removed from those dire times, the state has enjoyed a solid decade of positive economic performance and budget results. Yet, this historical sharing arrangement has not been restored. As a result of breaking the historical relationship in 2002, an additional $838 million has accrued to the state rather than being shared with municipalities. Unfortunately, the 1% increase in the state sales tax rate and the decision to break the 55-year-old sharing arrangement with municipalities was not sufficient to avoid a fiscal crisis. The state adopted a second measure in 2002 that increased state revenues to the detriment of local governments. This additional measure doubled the amount of the purchase price of a single item that is subject to state and local sales tax. Prior to 2002, the first $1,600 of the purchase price of any single item was subject to state and local sales tax. The state elected to increase this cap, making the first $3,200 of the purchase price of any single item, subject to state and local sales tax. However, doubling this single article cap was not enough to balance the budget, so the 2002 change also provided that any additional revenue generated by applying the 2.75% that is ordinarily reserved for local governments was to be retained by the state. Last year, an additional $72 million accrued to the state as a result of this change, and more than $951 million has accrued to the state instead of local governments since 2002. Your TMO team has joined you in advocating for the restoration.
So what would that mean to Franklin? Just to give you a sense, to restore the historic percentage, that additional or 4.6% across the board on the state sales tax collection would mean about $1.3 million a year to Franklin. That's the estimate we have. Don't really have a specific number that ties to that single article component, but I would say it's significant just based on the broader numbers that were shared with you today, and that does vary a little more because it's fewer items over a time period. But one thing to always remember on local sales tax, every dollar we get, the same amount goes to public education. So when we look at our sales tax dollars, that is half of what's collected off of the local sales tax. The other half is going to Williamson County Schools and Franklin Special School District. So if that were treated like normal, which is the local sales tax is applied to items and comes to the locality in which it was generated, that would be dollars that we would both benefit from as a city, but also help our local school districts. So this is something that there's strong advocacy going on, that the governor's office has been spoken to about this. We're starting dialogue with legislators, et cetera, about this topic and looking at how this could be restored. Shown flexibility and how that could be phased back in over time, whatever it might take. But to get back to that point where this small percentage is shared consistently across this revenue collection back out to cities, which do bear a significant cost in supporting the businesses that generate sales tax. So I'll stop there. I know the mayor's worked on this issue as well, and anything you'd like to add, and then we're glad to answer any questions. We had this on as a resolution of support that then we would share with our legislative delegation and just use it as a talking point to say, hey, cities across the state are saying this is important to us. This helps us deliver on services, lessen or help us stretch our ability to what we tax our local taxpayers at. And collectively, this has been $2 billion over time that would have otherwise come to cities across the state. So it's a pretty significant impact.
Yeah, and I think that's a good summary. We have had some conversation with the governor, and we have spoken to our delegation as we get together with them on an annual basis during the annual Tennessee General Assembly. The example I like is that if you go out and buy a used Honda, say it's $12,000, our portion is $44. But if you go out and buy a Ferrari, our portion is $44. So, I mean, that's a great example of why it's important that we start to get our share back, and certainly we can put it to good use. We have plenty of projects that it could go toward, and so I think this will be a good thing to share with our delegation and also with the Tennessee Municipal League to continue to try to move both of these forward. Great.
Eric?
Yeah.
The one, whenever they went the 1%, they dropped the entire 4-point-something other percent?
No, they just didn't apply the 4.6% to that additional
to that
percent.
1%.
So they kept it all the way up through the 6, and they've continued that, but they just haven't applied it to that last
From
percentage.
6 to 7.
Yes.
So that makes, and I understand what happens when you cap at $1,600 of local sales tax.
Right.
Or $3,200 as they've gone to. So wasn't any, was there an advantage to capping from 16 to 32 or whatever for the state?
I think that was just to generate more revenue.
Okay.
The cap went up, so that allowed them to collect more. But while they were collecting more, they went ahead and took the local sales tax portion on that additional increment, as opposed to giving it back to the localities, which you do on every other aspect of sales tax that's collected on the local rate. So they're basically taking the local rate for that second portion, or that between 1,600 and 3,200.
So what happens, let's say they change that, and they with the lobbying that we do, but you said it was $2 billion over from 2002
Yeah,
or
collectively.
3.
Yeah, over that 20-year period,
20 year,
about $2 billion went into state
That should have
revenue.
gone back to state share, city shared revenue.
Yeah, if you had used the percentage share that had been in place for the 55 years before then, it would have, that would have all gone to
Okay.
cities across the state.
And I think you can also not only cities, but schools.
In schools.
So that's a good point to make, too. So, Alderman Blanton?
Obviously, y'all know fiscal stuff's not my strong suit. Thank God we have Michael. But, so will they also reduce that threshold from 3,200 back to 1,600, or is that not part of it?
No,
They're maintaining it.
Okay,
that's 1,600 to 3,200, that portion would start to come back to us.
okay. And then
So-
last question for clarification. I know that our delegation is, and a lot of other state reps are working really hard on the BEP equation, because we all know we have not gotten, as, you know, Vernon likes to say, our proportionate share. Would this be in danger of trying to fix that they may dip into that, that 1% to try to make that be a better, or is that confined just to that equation?
I mean, it's
of
all
how
going to be, it's
doled
all
out?
being part of what they're going to need to figure out. But the fact is, at this point, they've got a significant ongoing revenue surplus that they're looking at how they're programming that. So it's important to be at the table to say, this is, this is
Yeah, how rich do you want to
4.6%.
get before you help those of us who need it too?
Right, so they've got to solve, the question is to solve both those issues.
Okay.
Look at the historic change that was made in hard times. Cities essentially made sacrifices to help the state for the last 20 years. Do you want to restore that and deal with the school? There are significant ongoing projected, revenue over expenditures that are available. And these are ongoing revenues. That's what's important. The last two budgets, there were some one-time dollars sent to localities, but that's one-time money. So you're limited in what you can use that for. You can't plan long-term either projects or operational support on that. So this is really trying to take a longer-term view of it. Like I said, one of the options that I know is being talked about is a phase-in so that you can get there over time while you're looking at solving and putting more resources towards public education. But, I mean, clearly you can do both, and part of this does help local schools with local dollars and keeping those local like you do with most of the rest of sales tax. So,
Well, and it
it's
helps
all
that
in the mix.
It helps that it's a unified front, not just one community that's saying, we need this help. So thank you, Mayor Moore, for your TML work, and
You're welcome.
Well, the elimination of the Hall's income tax hasn't come up with the state saying, we've taken this and eliminated that. Has it, there, Mayor, my friend?
It came up, but they went deaf on it pretty quick.
All right, well.
It's in the rearview mirror,
what
let's
we
put it
want.
that way.
I hear you.
Yeah. But as Eric mentioned, there was $100 million 2 years ago that they gave to cities one time, and then $50 million last year. And I think now they think there's a recurring revenue stream that would, we're thinking there's a recurring revenue stream that would continue to fund and not put them in jeopardy. So the state's doing very well financially right now. So, how about Alderman Brown? Would you like to speak to permanent access to Mac Hatcher from the city's water reclamation facility?
Yes, sir, I would like to do that. Thank you. So currently, I don't know if we can pull that map up, but currently there's a construction access to the water treatment plant that is off of Mac Hatcher. You can see it up on the top right up there. That was permitted by TDOT during the construction phase to keep those construction vehicles off of what is currently a gravel road that comes off of Claude Yates down behind the Chestnut Bend neighborhood and into the plant. When the construction is complete, that is to be removed, that access to be removed. What that will leave is only the gravel access that would need to be paved.
Oh, okay.
Leaving, yeah, I know, I figured as much as good. That would need to be paved at some point, which still goes behind the neighborhood. Actually, can you scroll up just a little bit on that? Goes behind the Chestnut Bend neighborhood there. It actually crosses a pretty blind curve there on the trail, cuts through ball fields and parks, and then certainly, as you may know now, the EIC in the last couple of years launched at the annex, and overflow has gone to the annex. So we have a much more campus feel to the high school now, with kids pretty routinely crossing Claude Yates to get into that other building.
We did in the 80s too.
Did you?
It's called Yates Vocational School.
Well, there you go. There you go. So in an ideal world here, it would be fantastic if we could get TDOT to agree to leave that municipal only, limited access off of Mac Hatcher, right in, right out, for the ongoing truck traffic, removal of biosolids, and municipal staff in and out of there, which may keep us from having to pave that section behind there, as well as just keep safe the neighborhoods, the bike trails, and the schools from all that traffic on an ongoing basis. Would love your consideration of that. Thank you.
So we see this back as a
Yeah,
resolution?
if you're
or-
comfortable, we'd bring a resolution next time. It's not something that requires legislative action, it's really more of a TDOT administrative discussion. But Representative Whitson in particular suggested that that might be helpful. Obviously, we've got some other contacts at TDOT as well, but having the board speak in support of it, I'm sure will be helpful. So this will be something we can work on. There's not an immediate element because the project is still ongoing through the balance of the year, and that would obviously be maintained over the next year at least anyway. But this gives us something to work with TDOT on, and as Alderman Brown said, we would have access control. It would really not be a public street. It would be access for the operations of the water reclamation facility. So hopefully that would put their mind at ease. I know it's a limited access highway essentially, so I understand that, but this would be a way to preserve that, but help our operations and take some strain off of Claude Yates and really make it safer for everybody, as Alderman Brown's saying.
Thanks for bringing that to us. Alderman
So
Bratton,
two questions.
Vice
Would
Mayor.
we close down access off Claude Yates indefinitely?
I think you would still need to want to preserve it just to have another access in there if you need it, or if you somehow have a difficulty getting to that site. But this would become a primary
And Lord
access
knows
point.
it's only had one way in and one way out since its inception. So my other question is, would we gate it as it gets closer to the operating part of that? Because kids will be kids. And, you know what I mean, providing that kind of access, would we close off the wastewater treatment plant so that, you know what I mean? With
Coming
like
off
a-
of Claude Yates, is that what you're
or no-
talking about?
Well,
Or-
either or.
Well, you would need to have it gated.
Okay.
So key card access off of Mac Hatchard for sure, which is similar to what we have a little deeper, closer to the plant. Yes,
But-
like you see in other locations.
But not necessarily Claude Yates.
We'd have to look at that.
Look at
I'd
that.
want to walk that through with our folks. We haven't totally thought through how that would best work.
Is that road out of the floodplain?
It goes down, it looks like right at the highway, at Mac Hatcher, at least just from the picture that I took. And by the way, let me say, whenever I was looking at the picture and the floodplain and everything in there, I noticed that on our GIS map, it still says Columbia State Community College over here.
Probably a Google map, because I think I took that picture.
No.
Oh, is it on-
This is, our city GIS map has that there.
We'll update that.
Well, thanks for bringing that to us, Alderman Brown. In my haste to recognize you, I skipped number 10. And I like to switch those around, as you know. So ordinance 2021-51, an ordinance to amend Title II, Chapter 5 of the Franklin Municipal Code relative to the Franklin Civil War Historic Commission. Amanda?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me today. In case you all are not aware, I know we have some new folks here, we have a Civil War Historical Commission here in our community. It serves the city by providing advice to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen and to Eric on items related to the identification, the preservation, maintenance, and general recognition of battlefields and sites related to the history of the Civil War here in Franklin and in our community. It's our mission to help maintain and protect those irreparable historical resources here. Right now, the commission consists of 18 members. 10 of those are specific organizational representatives. So 10 organizations specifically called out in the ordinance. We have an alderman that serves. Right now, that's Alderman Baggett. And we have an educational liaison, and then the remainder of the 18 would be at-large members. So over time, we've had more interest in serving on the commission, which is really exciting. In fact, recently, we amended the ordinance to allow for 2 additional organizations to serve, the African American Heritage Society and the Historic Masonic Hall Foundation. So that framework isn't working so well in the sense that anytime there's an organization that has a vested interest in Civil War history that wants to serve, it has to be amended to call that organization out specifically. There are some issues with that, of course. Right now, we have 3 vacancies. One is with the Convention and Visitors Bureau. We want that organization to be involved, but every time there's a turnover with staffing at an organization, that has to come back before the commission to consider, or I'm sorry, before the board to consider. And we also have one organization that's represented twice because of some staffing changes internally for those organizations. We also have a lack of the ability to allow a more organic movement of organizations in our community. By calling out specific organizational representatives, it leaves out others. And so we'd like to allow for more diversity as the Board of Mayor and Aldermen see fit. So having a more open membership structure will allow for that greater flexibility. It will allow for more diversity in those organizations. And we're also hoping to better define a quorum. Right now, we only have 15 members of 18, so we've had difficulties obtaining a quorum. We'd like to define a quorum as the number of folks present on the commission, a majority of that, as opposed to the maximum number of commissioners available to be on a commission. So right now, that's what we have before you. Of course, all our members would be appointed by the mayor and to be considered for confirmation by the alderman. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about that.
Alderman Baggett, you serve on there. Go ahead.
I do, and I enjoy this commission and do a great job, Amanda. And this amendment is well written. A few things, the history of this as many of you all know, I'm not going to go into it, but has been kind of it's where a lot of these different organizations came together, as many of you all remember, and to do some really, really nationally renowned things here in Franklin as far as battlefield preservation. In fact, well, I won't digress because of time. But a couple things as I've looked through this, and I want to make sure, though, so that history, I bring that up because it really was originally formed so that all the various battlefield preservation groups and historic preservation groups came together and worked together kind of in common. So there was history of kind of a demonstrated involvement.
Synergy.
Yeah, a synergy, and so it's getting all of our heads together. So I think we want to make sure that future mayors, not our current mayor, but future mayors and folks, we want to make sure that having that demonstrated interest, this really isn't, there's lots of organizations that people can get involved with if they want to start and learn and begin in engaging in the Civil War historic preservation, and we want to make that accessible to everybody. But we want to make sure that they have, and this is comments from the commission that I got after this was published, but having that demonstrated interest and commitment to Civil War history and preservation kind of as a loose, I think it's loose enough that demonstrated history to preservation and Civil War history. I think that can encapsulate quite a few people, but also nods towards, this is really not where you want to come and learn about the battle. Come with some demonstrated interest. The other thing is the similar language to the Sustainability Commission for members who just failed to engage. So the Sustainability Commission has some language in our ordinance, or I say ours because we served on that for a while, but where there is some ability to take action if just people just stop showing up. And so I think maybe just copying that and putting that in there, and then adding a public comment, because we want to make it to template for procedures. So it was a section of it, and we talked about that.
Right.
And I know that's in the spirit of it, of what we're doing here. But maybe making that a formal thing so the public knows, should they go to read the ordinance, that that is something they're entitled to, is to have public input at these meetings. So those are the three comp feedback I got.
Okay,
But
thank you.
obviously approve.
Other comments or questions? Thanks for serving on that, Alderman Baggett. And you were on that before becoming an alderman?
No.
Oh, you weren't? Oh, good. Okay. Well, if I skipped anything else before we go to item 12? Was there another question? I'm sorry.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks to you, Amanda. How about consideration of the new City Hall master plan and cost estimates?
Call our
Special
We'll have our
work
team
session.
come up here. Yeah, this is what we talked about for a special work session, and our calendar allowed us to allocate that time in this meeting, so we're thankful for that. We have a very brief group of slides, I won't even call it a presentation, that sort of summarizes some key things from what we talked about a month ago, and then also gives you some context for your discussion, and that is really what this is prioritized to be, is board discussion. Based on what we talked about last month, we are working to bring forward to you a scope of service for the schematic design. But any other feedback you have tonight may help us with finalizing that and bringing it to you as early as our next meeting. So I'll hand it over to the group, and we'll walk you through these few slides and then open it up for whatever discussion you want to have, and however we can be a resource for you and thinking about this project and providing any additional direction. So, Vernon.
Thank you, Eric. Good evening, everybody. At the previous meeting, when I made the presentation, I mentioned that Joe Marlowe, our colleague and staff engineer, had done the lion's share of work on that presentation. So we're glad that he's here to review these few slides, as Eric mentioned, to help set the stage for the discussion. So Joe will spend about 5 to 7 minutes to go over those, and then we'll field your questions as best as we can. Joe?
All right, looks like we're good. Good evening, Mayor, Mr. Mayor and Alderman. My name is Joe Marlowe, as Vernon said. I'm a City of Franklin employee in the engineering department, and it is my privilege to be here tonight to be able to present to you the cost estimates and options for the new City Hall master plan. As we mentioned, this will be a shorter version of what Vernon gave on the January 11th work session. We're going to focus in on the options themselves and the costs and leave plenty of time for discussion. As Vernon mentioned in that January 11th work session, the current construction market costs are significant, and the cost of our overall master plan is significant. So we have presented the BOMA a full range of options to consider to continue to make meaningful progress towards our new City Hall. The three options as presented were the full master plan. Then options 2 and 3 were a phased master plan, or building a portion of the master plan now and leaving a portion to be constructed in the future, sort of taking steps and continuing to walk. The option 2 was the minimum we could do now while still making meaningful progress, which was the partial building and partial garage. And then option 3 is a mix between option 1 and 2, which is the partial building and the full garage, as well as some other elements that we'll discuss that will be deferred. Now, based on feedback, your feedback at that work session, we've removed option 2, and we're going to focus in on options 1 and options 3. So as a review of option 1, the full master plan, this is everything we've seen to date. It's the full building, the full garage outlined there in red, the full streetscape, the full urban parks, green roof, everything. And again, it comes at a significant cost. And we're going to skip option 2 and go into option 3, which is phased master plan, partial building, and full garage. And as a reminder, this option, we still have the full garage outlined there in red. However, the building would be a 78,500 square foot, 3-story building constructed to the left side of that heavy dashed line there. For reference, 3rd Avenue is to the bottom of the screen, Public Square is to the lower left. And we know that with that 3-story building, it will complete the square, giving us the mass and context that's appropriate for our historic public square. We also know when we're looking at our existing square footage of our City Hall that when designed as a city hall, that square footage will be sufficient to give us the function and efficiency we need for our city hall. I want to state the obvious, our full master plan does not fit in into a 78,500 square foot building. And decisions on priorities are going to be necessary, and those decisions will be made. In the next stage, the schematic design phase, we have a reprogramming element. The first part of that, we will be going through and refining those priorities. I do just want to state for the record that while we say partial building, this option here is going to look good. All four sides are going to be complete. It's going to look good. We're going to be proud of our city hall. Also under this option, we are deferring 3 elements. The full streetscape, which is shown in red, the urban parks areas that are shown in purple, and the green roof that is not shown on this slide. But a couple notes about those as well. While we would be deferring the streetscape shown in red, we're going to tear up our sidewalks along 3rd Avenue. We still got to put a 12-inch water line down 3rd Avenue to serve our new building. We've got monies in this option to repair our frontage, to repave 3rd Avenue. Our frontage is going to look good. The urban parks that are deferred in purple, around the portion of the building we would not be constructing in this option, those would be essentially a lawn type area. We're still going to go ahead and remove the surface parking, the Church Street parking, and the parking around City Hall, and those would be a lawn type element. But I also want to note that we are keeping all of the urban parks, all of the hardscape to the left of that heavy dashed line. Again, our building is going to look good. It's going to look complete. And while the green roof would also be deferred, we're ensuring the structure can support those as well as the architectural detailing. All right. This is the same table that Vernon presented at that work session. However, we've removed option 2. So to review it, the overall project cost for option 1, full master plan, just north of $106 million. Option 3 coming in at $74.5 million. The building square footages are shown there. And then the next 3 lines are all about parking, as option 1 and option 3 now have the same garage. They're going to be the same numbers. It's a full garage, 204 spaces, giving us a net of 137 spaces on the site. I think there was a question about that at the last, or 2 work sessions ago, what that net means. And what that means is we're going to build 204 new spaces in our parking garage. We're removing the Church Street lot and the other adjacent spaces, which is 85 spaces. So we're removing 85, and we're going to be adding back 18 surface spaces. So if you do that math, 204 minus 85 plus 18, we're going to get a net of 137 spaces on our site, which gives us about 520 spaces on the site, not including the on-street parking. So it'll be a significant amount of parking on this site.
Sure, go ahead.
Good.
Is that including the entirety of the 2nd Avenue? Or is that,
That's with a 299 parking garage. Our parking garage is 299.
and then
And this will be 204 plus the 18 surface spaces.
Okay.
All right.
Oh,
Both options-
wait.
Go ahead.
Go over that number one more time. Because 299 and 204 and 18 minus the 75 or 80 that you're losing.
No, you've already netted that out.
You've already netted that out? How'd you net it out with 204?
So there's a net increase of, there's a net increase of 137. Right now there's 299 plus 85. That's what's there right now, and we're going to add 137 net to that.
Okay.
So what will be constructed at the end of the project would be the 299 that are already there.
Yes.
204 in structure, and then 18
Plus
service
18.
spots.
Yes.
And that gets you to your 500.
That gives me the 520.
520.
We can get to it all kinds of ways. Yep. All right. Both option 1 and option 3 are going to be LEED silver. Even option 3 with deferring that green roof, we're going to have an efficient enough building to be able to achieve LEED silver. That's important to you, the community, to staff. These numbers all include FFE and technology. These are all inclusive. These are budgeting numbers. So they include FFE and technology. They include a $2.5 million allowance for temporary relocation. We're going to have some time between when we demolish this structure and build our new structure. We anticipate most staff working from home, as we did at the early stages of the pandemic. However, we're still going to have public-facing staff that need a place. We're still going to have space for meetings like this. So we're carrying an allowance for that. And then again, option 1 includes the cost for the streetscape, urban parks, and green roofs. And option 3, those elements would be deferred. And then the last slide is a staff recommendation. Staff recommends that we proceed with a schematic design for option 3. The schematic design being the next design phase for this project. We have to do something with this city hall. Proceeding with the schematic design continues to take the step forward needed to eventually achieving our goal of moving into a new building. So we know that at the square footage of 78,500, when designed as a city hall, will be functional and efficient for our needs. We know that the 3-story structure constructed here on the corner of Public Square will complete the square, will give us some massing in the context that's appropriate for its historical nature. Building the full parking garage now will maximize site parking, while option 3 gives us the unique ability to maintain flexibility should we decide to build a partial garage later on. Option 3 allows for future master plan development. In a nutshell, option 3 gives us more options. Right now, with the sprawling mall that we're in, our options really are limited, not real good. This gives us more options to continue to build. As Eric mentioned at that work session, it also gives the option to see how post-pandemic work life plays out and potentially tailor our future expansion into that master plan accordingly. Option 3 at the $74,500,000 is within the recommended resources of the CIP. It still gives us that $20 million buffer. And very importantly, it progresses the new City Hall timeline. We've taken a 1-year chunk out with this first phase. Schematic design will be a little over another year chunk out as we progress and march toward that summer of 2026 move-in date. And the schematic costs to do that are $1,398,000. That's all I got.
Thank you, Joe.
How much have we chunked out so far?
You've taken
I mean,
it's
I
about a
like-
5-year project.
I like the chunk out.
You've knocked a year out.
But I want, no,
So-
just dollar and cent, how much? Because you came before us.
Oh, you're talking about dollars?
Yeah.
Well, what do we spend on the master plan? It was
It's a little bit north of 800,000.
turn on your mic. About a little over $800,000.
So we're looking at another $1.3 million.
Just under $1.4 million for the schematic design. Yeah.
May I elaborate on that? a little
Sure,
bit?
go ahead.
Certainly.
Are we going to talk about the presentation also?
Oh, yeah, whatever you want.
We weren't going to walk through the master plan. That's been presented previously. We're glad to speak
I want to
it
go
as a-
back and look, I've looked
Okay.
at it a lot
No, we're
more
glad to
in
talk about it. We
detail
just weren't gonna
than I
present it.
had before,
Yeah.
and there's some questions.
Yeah, we weren't going to present it to you. We're glad to work from it and answer any questions you have, for sure.
So we can be ready with pictures, so you're talking about the other
Oh, yes,
presentation?
the other presentation, exactly.
Okay, so we can pull that up whenever we get to you.
Thank
Go ahead, Vernon, and then we'll start going around.
Well, it's going to be, we want to respond to your questions as best as possible, and Alderman Barnhill's question about the schematic design costs. We're aware of what the overall design costs are that are typical with projects. It's usually a percentage of the overall square footage and cost of the project. So this is in line with that. And we can review those details if you want at a different time of what that total projection cost will be, depending on, of course, the option.
So we ready for questions and comments? We'll start out with Alderman Peterson, if you like, or I can we'll come back to you in a minute then. Why don't we just start here, Alderman Barnhill? We'll just go down the line.
Well, I'm not sure exactly where we are on, well, I'm pretty sure where we are on this right here. What I need to understand is, on the old design, we were looking at, and correct me if I'm wrong, a 40,000 square foot footprint. Were we? Of the old design?
Back in how many, that few years ago?
Yeah, 40,000 square feet, then the second floor was 40, and the third was 30. How far off am I? You're still at 40 here.
Last slide. The last slide shows the square footage. You're in the same ballpark. This
Right.
is 106,000. That was around 110,000.
Right.
If you're talking about the 2008, 2009 general plan that was talked about,
Yeah.
something like that.
Well, no, not exactly.
I'm not sure.
I'm talking about the one that,
106,000
look,
or
before-
115,000 square
You got
feet.
106,000
Sorry.
square
Yeah.
feet there, and you got 74,000 square
It's
feet.
115,000, I'm sorry, 106 is the price tag, 106 million. Sorry.
115,078.
Too close.
I'm sorry.
Come back, yeah,
Too close.
let's.
I want to know what the
straighten this out.
footprint was on the
Thank you.
115,000.
Thank you, good question.
Was it 40,000 square feet?
You're talking about of the building as a whole.
Well, reference to
What
building
was the
square
first
footage.
floor?
What's the first
Yeah.
floor footprint?
We
You're probably in the ballpark.
But 40,
Around
40.
40-ish.
Yeah. Well, then that, and that, I
This
understand
is
that.
80.
That comes up to the 80, that comes up and matches your 78.5. But you've got a third floor on this thing right here on option 3, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I can maybe help with
That's
Go-
the reason I want to go back to that, the whole thing.
Yeah, we'll give you a chance in a minute. Go ahead, Mr. Kerr.
Thank you. So as we went through the preliminary master plan and met with stakeholders and including the Design Review Committee, the Historic Zoning Commission, it looked at massing and scale. And the footprint is not indicative of layering 2 additional stories on top of it because there are offsets on the building. The green roofs is an example. So we have a 1-story, 2-story, and 3-story structure on the site as the preliminary plan shows, although we don't have the detail on what each floor is at that 115,000 square foot. But it's larger than 40,000 square feet would be the footprint of the building. And the garage takes up the majority of the site.
It's layered like a wedding cake as you go on up. And this, I've specifically left this slide to be very conceptual. We're not going to have a hard line right there that goes all the way up through everything. We're going to be stepping back accordingly to reach that 78,500 square feet.
Well, the only thing I was saying was that at one time it was 3 stories, and it was 115,000 square feet, or whatever that was on there. And now it's 3 stories, and it's 78,000 square feet.
Because you're not building the full block. You see the picture, like that dark red line? That shows you where you're stopping. You're not going all the way to Church, closer to Church Street. Of course, you don't have the park element either.
And that's, I'm glad you explained that. And what I'm asking is what was the square footage on the original, don't skip the dark line and go out to the red line, is that the original footprint?
Yes, the dash.
The dashes. Is that the original footprint?
The original footprint of what? What are
Of
you
the
talking
building
about?
itself,
Existing building or the master plan?
the master plan?
Okay.
That is the master plan image
Yes.
that's up on the screen right now. So actually, let's just go to the master. This is a full master plan building. So everything in white is the building, and then the areas towards Church Street are 1-story areas. I don't have the massing drawings here in front, but those were 1-story areas, and the 3-story was closer to Public Square, and it transitions as you get towards the residential. The red line is indicating the underground parking. That red line on both there, they line up. The red's the underground extents of the underground parking. It's not the extents of the building.
So you're saying only 1 story on that, the part close to.
The white area is only,
Not in the master plan.
the second story does not mirror
Right.
the white area up there. Is that right? Yeah.
Right, the second story is the whole building does not go straight up 3 stories. Like I said, it steps back. Like a wedding cake, and even more so on the Church Street side, it is all 1 story. I can try to find some massing. That would, yeah, can you share
Pull
that?
that up. We're pulling it up.
Well,
Legos.
Can we all bring our Legos next time?
Let us say, if you
We'll
look
walk
at those as we go up, you will see that the boardroom doesn't have a second floor on it because it's open all the way to the second floor. The entrance doesn't have a second floor on it because it's open all the way up.
So do you want us to walk through the floor plates? How about that? So this is the first floor.
So as you can see, the first floor,
What page is that on?
12 of 19 of
Gotcha.
the
Gotcha,
presentation, the
exactly.
October presentation.
plan.
The master plan presentation. This is that floor plate, that first floor plate, the maximum amount of space that would be taken up. That's the first floor. The second floor
It's on page 13.
is on page 13.
Exactly.
And you'll note green roof, future expansion roof. So the
But
amount.
also, please,
that-
while you're on that, look and see, it says lobby below. It says boardroom below.
Yeah.
There's nothing up there on that floor.
It's still it's constructed. There's walls around it. It's part of getting
Yeah.
to the third floor. Okay? It's not vacant space. It is part of the building. You're just dealing with a larger room, at least in this
No,
this
I
master
mean,
plan.
I'm asking, is it going to be, is the boardroom going to be
Yes, as
wait,
the
okay.
master plan is conceived right now, it assumes that. Now, that is still something that can be looked at
Well-
in the schematic design, but right now it is. And you've got a third floor above that. So it's not open, it's built, okay? There's a wall, and you're going to the third floor, and you've got office space above the boardroom there.
On the
third floor.
On the third floor only.
Yes.
So, and I don't know the numbers on this, but okay, what's the ceiling height right here in this room?
10 to 12.
12.
What, pardon me?
10 to 12.
10 to
12.
12, okay. So this boardroom would be 24 feet, right then?
You got to deal with your mechanicals, so that's what.
Brad, come on up so we can hear you.
Yeah.
I'm a better screamer.
No, you're.
Bring your chair, Brad, you can sit beside me.
Here you go.
As we walk through the floor plates, once Michael's done sharing those, we have found a massing illustration that will show you how wedding cake lays.
But as I say, if you look at those pictures, move that thing right there over on the side, you'll see that there's these big, what they call monumental stairs though, and it's open space up there. In other words, there's no floor.
It's an open staircase, yes.
Go ahead, Alderman Baggett.
I just kind of, and I know that the details of this and the various details of how this ultimately, if it is built, is of highest concern. I believe that comes through the next process where we really dig into the details.
Right.
And Alderman Peters, I think we will get into, do we want a two-story boardroom? Do we want a one-story? I think we really have to decide, if I'm understanding this correctly, and I very well could not be, but we have to decide whether or not option one or two, from a massing standpoint, conceptually, at a cost, is what we want to do. And if we don't, I have comments about all kinds of intricacies about the looks of this thing. But I think conceptually, I feel like we need to really, no offense, not talk about the mechanicals of this, but really talk about what can we afford and what do we want to do.
Well-
I mean, I would just urge all of us to probably stay on that track. I mean, we can get to that.
Wait just a minute though. They have presented these same things. Well, they've changed them a little bit because I looked back at the old one in, March or whatever it was or something like that. But they still have all of this planned with the monumental stair, with the, and so in other words, my concern is that could be another floor where square footage there. And so that's the reason I wanted to know about
And that's something you would have to consider in schematic design, because there's benefit to that open stairway and that it gives you a visual, so when our citizens come in, they can see, oh, there's the development services up on the second floor. I know instinctually how to get up there and go and get served, as opposed to if it's totally closed off. I mean, that's the philosophy behind it. And part of what you'll do in schematic design is look at some of those trade-offs. And as Joe referred to, there's going to be some reprogramming elements, because we're trying to make them, if you go in option 3, that route, we're trying to make the most of that 78,500 square feet. We want those benefits, but there's also elements that made sense in the beginning in the master plan to have some of that openness, some of those things that help people instinctively navigate the building and those sort of things. So those would be the kind of trade-offs we'll talk about and consider as we go through this next phase.
But we have, whenever we were saying on this, we got feedback from the board of mayor and aldermen about some things and everything. So I want to ask some questions and have some feedback about some other things other than just, are we going to do the full garage and part of this? But I mean, if you're still talking about these things right here, if you fix that to make the whole picture of number 13, okay, if you look, you will see that these have a great amount of what I call glass, window glass and everything on them. Are we thinking about having that on the front of this? I'm just saying,
Yeah, let me, just one at a time, because your questions, Alderman Peterson, are almost perfectly timed, except some of that would come as we move into the schematic design and reprogramming. But there is no way the Historic Zoning Commission or staff would allow a glass contemporary building here. The more appropriate relationship would be the 231 building, but also keep in mind, as has come up early in this conversation, that we do have to respect the old historic courthouse across the street, the county building, the church as we move towards Church Street, and then transition to those residential-like buildings that are on Church Street. And that's where the work has been done on this preliminary plan.
Can I just add? Oh, go ahead. I was just going to help. I wanted to say one thing. I think maybe sometimes we get too hung up on these pictures. I would like to see us just take those pictures away, because that's all the way down the hall, down the way later, and I think we get too hung up on them.
Well, well, obviously, there have been some meetings of design people, and I don't know, maybe historic design, but I've read here, I think, where they've said they've talked to a design group or something like that and everything. And so, but whenever we have been talking about things, we haven't given any feedback about any of that aspect of it, but whenever I go back to.
I would disagree with you a little bit, Alderman Peterson. We have had some ability to make some comments. I would disagree with you, Alderman Peterson. We have had the ability to make comments. It may not have been in the last few months, but months ago, we did get some input.
Well, now, let me also ask you, I have not seen picture one about a boardroom. I mean, it has all these other things, where there it says variety of meeting space and all that stuff. It has break rooms and all that. And if you're continuing to look at all of this, then we haven't seen some things that I think are extremely important. I mean, is it going to be this size? I don't even know square footage or anything on this. I mean, but things like that. It's been more, whenever they were talking about, and in fact, even on the master plans where they've had people responding, employees, but also just the public. But it seems like, I know they said they wanted daylight, and I can understand that, because I can very well remember at Columbia State, I was so glad to finally get an office that had a window on it as opposed to not. But what I'm saying is, it seems like sometimes the questions that they ask, that they had people respond to, were kind of more like rhetorical questions, where they wanted, to say you to pick things like, and other than something about the wanting fresh air and windows and things like that. But then there were some where they just said, name what you think you would like to have, and people said a welcome center, or an indoor community meeting spaces, art gallery space, and things like that. And so apparently they had a list of things, and then you named them. I mean, and I believe these were to the employees.
So,
And
well,
what
it was
does that have
it was
to
to the
do?
public and to the employees, and that's the purpose of the master plan function that we've just gone through, is to identify the types of uses, some general scope in terms of size of meeting rooms, of office space that you need, the adjacencies that make sense from a functional standpoint. So it's really about the broader pieces of how big the building needs to be, how large those individual elements need to be, what elements you even want in there to allocate space to, and then what adjacencies make sense from a work functional collaboration standpoint, from a logical where our citizens want to go and do business, and where you want to have that public facing space. And so it's really those elements that help us understand how big the box needs to be and what pieces are where within those three levels. These other elements are much more designed. You're kind of ready to jump into the next phase in a lot of aspects. And that's what we're really looking at, is getting a sense of what we're trying to build and then color in the specific design elements from there.
But let me say to you, I'm looking at the questions to employees, and question number 6 was, which outdoor spaces and amenities are you interested in seeing as a part of the future City Hall for the public? Please rank them in order. In other words, they gave you some things to rank in order. And you know, I mean, to me, the outdoor space is not going to be the most important thing for people that are working here. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm saying that
Well,
people work-
it's one question of many about the different
it was one
functions
of
and elements.
15.
And the same question was asked I believe, to the public.
No, it was
That was
not-
asked
the
to
same-
employees. There
the
were
same
open,
questions were
there were
not
open
asked.
surveys that people were provided. We had, I don't know, 700, 800 people
that's
take
right,
it.
that's right.
So,
But then it says which, and then number 7's,
I guess I'm real confused where you're going with this.
well, my point is, sometimes whenever it says, which, you know, like they say, which ones, you rank them 1 through 8, or something like that. In other words, they're not saying, you tell me what you would like to have, or would you even be interested as you know, one of them says.
Let me come back to you in a minute, if
Okay,
I may.
okay.
Maybe you can compose exactly what you want to say again, because give a minute to think about it. So I'll ask Alderman Berger to.
I just have a point of order, if I may. Could we re-clarify, because I'm sure we've all been on these committees with our churches and stuff. I've sat on 3 church buildings as committee, always on the architectural review, and I've sat on 1 K through 12 private school. So I've got 4 under my belt. One of the things has happened, and I see this happening here with all due respect to everybody. I'm not trying to dig at anybody here. But sometimes we get bogged down in a picture or this or that or a question, fair enough, some questions that are really important. But I'd like a point of order. What is the main topic here that we're supposed to be discussing? Because a lot of these elements, I think, get back into the development stage or the design stage and things that I think we all are very interested in. Ann's pointing that out as well, and we really do have an interest. But what is the main goal right now for discussion? May I ask that?
let me address that.
Yes, thank you.
We've presented you with some options, and we presented you with a recommendation. What we heard back from you all is you wanted to have some time to talk together about what we've presented to you. So there's financial elements in terms of what cost and what we're willing to put towards this project versus the other capital investment work that we're doing in the community, as well as, what do you want to see in that schematic design? Because what we generally got is you're ready to see us move to that. We just want to make sure we're designing something that's in the right realm in terms of size and scope, both in terms of the building itself, but also the cost and how it fits into our overall financing plan.
Thanks for refocusing us.
Could we go through maybe and all talk about the size, or just like focus on the size and money, like just stay on point, like why we believe the recommendation or option 1 or 3 is what we'd like, and then just stay honed in on those things. So can we do that?
Go ahead.
Oh.
Wait, can I ask a question first?
Yep, sure.
Sure.
So nobody has asked, and maybe I'm missing it. So if we went from a footprint of this, a rectangle, and now we're condensing it for the functionable space, not the garage, to a square, correct? If we're not gonna do the Church Street area and a lot of
smaller
that's,
rectangle.
Yes.
a lot of that's green.
A smaller rectangle, yeah.
Okay. What is gonna be on the first, second, and third level of the remaining part of the rectangle we're not building City Hall?
And that's
I'm like, wait a minute, nobody's asking. It's like, we're gonna build the parking garage, and that's great, but the parking garage isn't gonna mirror 3 stories against, because, so what's gonna be there if we do
and that is
a square instead of a rectangle?
an excellent question.
Thank you. That was as
Excellent
simple as I
question.
could put it.
And that what that is that's that. So you're right. Up to this stage, we've seen the master plan, the 115.7. We are going to go through that reprogramming effort in the first part of the schematic design, and we are going to, because we're not just drawing a line and otherwise all facilities would be cut off. If
I
we
know,
do it
I'm
just
just
that
trying
way
to
it is.
visually.
We're going to be going through that reprogramming effort and determining where everything goes in order to maximize that 78,500. So we don't have that answer now, but we will as we go through this next design phase, the schematic design phase, and specifically the first part of that, we will actually be bringing back to the BOMA. Staff is going to go through the reprogramming effort. We're going to bring it to leadership. There's going to be a rinse and repeat going through different departments. Then we are going to bring it to the BOMA to show you the results of that reprogramming effort before we even get to see an SD drawing set.
Because some feedback I've had in the community is, why do you need to build more space if you can function in 78? And I'm loosely saying this. So why can't you, and in the old days, before 2008, it was like, we can kind of do a private-public partnership where somebody else takes part of the footprint, and maybe their investment offsets our investment by way of rent or, right. So what are the, if we never do our full dream, if we never build our dream house, and we're just going to get something we can raise our family in and have plenty of room without the pool and the gardens, what? Yeah, so when you build that and say that, we can say later we may complete a second phase and do it all. In the meantime, how does that space sit there idle knowing that our footprint is going to be reduced?
Well, there won't be idle space. It'll be an active, fully engaged City Hall building. What you have is additional areas you could build in a later phase. Okay, so you can build onto that second floor or that third floor, build out the green roof areas, have those additional office spaces that you can add on that potentially would match this master plan. Or, if we're doing it 15 years down the road, it may look a little different because we've learned some things. Or we have our needs have changed over time. So you're not going to have open space that you're going to build, and you're going to use what you built in phase 1.
So how far does the parking go up from underground to how many floors?
It is 1 story underground.
That's it?
That's it. 200 spaces.
So in that first phase, the entire first floor is built. Is that correct?
No.
No.
Okay, because I heard something different here just a
Show
moment
the-
ago.
show
And
slide
that's not what
4.
I heard
Show
before.
slide 4.
Okay. So I mean,
Right there.
Yeah.
yeah. And it's not, again, the line is conceptual, where it's going to be a 78,500 square foot
Ish.
building.
Yeah.
Ish. The garage itself, in this option, will be completely built out, 204 spaces. So there's going to be areas where there is not a building above the garage. There's going to be dirt above the
That's
garage.
my question. What are we
That's
doing
what-
with that?
We're going to have a dirt, there's
Like,
going to be
if we
dirt.
You're
gonna have
and
a
then-
grassy area
Then there'll
in the
be,
back part of the
then there'll be a lawn type element above that element. The garage will be structured to be able to support the lawn type element as well as a future building. So we're
Got
going to
it.
ensure that the garage can support that future building when we build on top of it in the future.
Thank you, sorry, I just,
Well,
nobody
I
was
think you made some
asking.
great points, Vice Mayor. Alderman Baggett?
So I think a few things. One, that we've got to look at, and one, I don't know, I think this is kind of how my thought process went. One, if we build the option 3, if I were in the same seat in 20 years, Right now, it's either City Hall downtown or, it was, or none. I think in 20 years, you've already got part of it here. Why wouldn't you just build somewhere else cheaper out on another parcel? And I wonder if this ever ultimately gets built out, because the construction costs go up, and you've got a City Hall downtown already, and it's activating, and it's going to be even more valuable real estate. So that's a bit of a risk for me, because I don't know that would we ever vote to rebuild or add on in the future. And so that's a little bit. And construction costs really will never be as cheap as they are today in the future. And this corridor is vital. This is not just this is so vital to the entryway of this town, and doing it right is imperative. And doing it, I know it will look good, and we will have a park, and it will look like a complete City Hall if we do part of it. And I'm still open to that. But I think we have to be really thoughtful long-term, because this is going to be a 100-plus-year-old building. In fact, it may be even longer than that, because by that time, the Historic Zoning Commission will have hold of it, and we probably won't be able to tear it down. So, with all due respect. And so we have to make sure that this is right. I'm worried about not activating 3rd Avenue on the first floor. I'm worried about that becoming a permanent inactive, and the streetscape does some of that with pedestrian walkway. However, where are they walking to? They're walking to the residents. There's businesses across the street. There may be some opportunity there, and this goes to what you were saying, Brandy, is there this public-private kind of thing, which I don't know exactly that's where I'm heading, but the opportunity to do some things creative that might get that entryway to be what it should be. And it should be somewhat more activated. Should be, and I know the retail component wasn't in the master plan. And so we may need to revisit that and talk about that component. I know that subleasing of office space in the short term for this second phase, should we decide to build it, it was not in the master plan. But we need to think about that, because this is some of the most valuable land probably in Middle Tennessee, certainly, and it's the taxpayers' land. And if we can use that to lower the taxpayer cost for the City Hall subletting, then I think it should absolutely be considered. Final thing, let's see here. Option 1 is actually a little bit incomplete, because we could take off the streetscape, urban parks, and the green roof, which frankly I'll let a later BOMA vote on the green roof, I understand, but I just don't see it as a priority. And then that would lower it by another $9 million. So we have option 3, and I took that from the prior proposal. So we have option 3 that doesn't have those things, but option 1 still has them. So I think we could probably even see further cost savings by taking those out in the short run, and then maybe come back and do the streetscapes and some other things later in the future. So, and then we haven't even value engineered. My favorite comment, not my only favorite comment I've ever heard Vernon say, but on this topic, was we haven't even value engineered it yet. And I think that's very important for us to realize too, that it can go down. So those are my comments. I would like to hear everyone's thoughts on the subleasing of the option 1, and looking at public. I think we should own the property. We should not sell the property. That should not be something that we can't ever get back. I know there's funding concerns. But I think conceptually, before we get into the weeds of how the bonds work, let's talk about, is that even in the appetite of the group? Thank you.
I'm going to go to Alderman Potts, and then after that, I'll go back to Alderman Peterson, if you're ready, Alderman Peterson, after that.
Sure.
Yes, sir. I think, Verna, did you have something?
No,
Did you have something for Alderman Baggett? Or
Well, yeah, when on Alderman Baggett, you mentioned value engineering. We've got some very talented staff here, and that would begin in the schematic design. The other piece that I should mention in some of the dialogue is that the schematic design lays out a schedule for a little bit over a year that includes coming back to you with certain parts of that schematic design, because it's really the schematic design in its true meaning is taking the programming document, the ideas, the concepts, the vision, and start translating those into space before you get into the construction and civil drawings. So we would be coming back to you periodically over this next year, showing the things that you want to take a look at that more would translate into the physical character of the building, inside and out. So, thank you.
Thank you, Vernon. I think Alderman Baggett raises some excellent points that we do need to consider. One of the questions that I have right now is when we start looking at the building square footage between option 1, which is 115,700, and option 3, which is 78,500. My question is, what departments are being impacted, and are we looking at placing them at off-site locations? Have we got that far yet?
Well, my expectation is the departments that are in City Hall today will be in option 3. They just may be a smaller footprint than what is in the master plan itself. So we're operating in about 80,000 today. That is a 30% inefficiency. So we will eliminate a great deal of that 30%. So even though it's roughly the same size, it will be much more efficiently laid out, and we'll get a greater benefit out of the space that we have. So it really is, in my mind, an increase in functional space, although it's still a similar total square footage. But I would expect everything we had planned is here, but just we'll modify layouts and amount of square foot, and I would hope we would work to keep similar adjacencies, the areas that collaborate, work together from both the internal work, but also the customer interaction standpoint as well.
And to piggyback on what Eric has mentioned, we don't want to lose sight of what we learned over the last 2 years with the pandemic. We will have all departments in this building functioning. However, we've also learned some things about flexible work schedules. So that will create some more efficiencies as well. And then also, I want to go back to what Alderman Blanton brought up, because somebody might say, well, you have designed a preliminary plan of a 115,000 square foot building. How are you going to operate in a 78,500 square foot building? This current footprint is very inefficient. It's 80,000 square feet. We know that. The new 78,000 will be more efficient. But we also know from that programming document, we have approximately 210 people in this building when they're here full-time, 8 to 5. And our projection for 2040 or so is about 240 people. So that's where that extra square footage will be needed if, in fact, we'll all have physical presence in this building from 8 to 5, essentially. So we want to take this opportunity to explore what we've learned with flexible work schedules, as many entities are doing.
You done?
I'll hold the rest of my comments for later.
Okay. Alderman Peterson? No, I'm going back to you.
Well, first of all, I do want to say, and I think everyone has said, that if we are talking about completing the square, we want it to look like a building that should be on the square. And I just in reviewing some of this, I noticed that most of the things across the street, now not really on this side, amazingly, were built in about 1900. I mean, I've gone back and looked at the dates that they were built. And so they have a certain look. Now, the 231, you know, that we have over on the side here is somewhat different. But I noticed that they do not have all these big windows or anything like that. So, you know, really, if you're talking about looking like historic downtown Franklin, you don't want to have something that really looks a lot different. And so I think, first of all, just the appearance on the outside. And I think most people that responded to things have said that. But then being able to do this. But I also am looking here in April of 2021. I'm looking back on the other presentation, not the money presentation. I'm looking at, on page 3, it says that there was, in 2021, it says community engagement round, they had community and staff surveys, Franklin Public Arts Commission meeting, civic stakeholders meeting. I have no idea what that is. I know what the Downtown Neighborhood Association was. But I have ideas that, and perhaps in October, the Historic Design Review Committee meeting, and I don't know what community family room chat was or anything like that. But what I'm saying is, I would have liked to have heard the presentation or the comments from other people and just had an opportunity. I like to go to almost all the neighborhood meetings and everything. I would have liked to have heard what these people had to say, because I think that some of them would have interest in, what something looks like. And I'm looking on page 4, it says balance security with a welcoming city hall. And I think that the idea of security is extremely important here and needs to be something that is an important aspect of this. And, then I looked on like page 5, and it talked about what percentage of it would be for administrative and zoning staff and all things like that, which I thought seemed really good. Too, and as I say, whenever they, it says design professionals and developers. As I say, civic stakeholders. I don't know who that is, but anyway, as they're talking about people that they reached out to and everything, but also, whenever they were asking, I'm looking on page 7 now. And question 4 said, would you like to see any of the following community indoor spaces as used as part of future city hall? Please check up to 3. And they said the Welcome Center here. In thinking about that, I'm not sure if that kind of fits into the security aspect of it, because there are a lot of times when the Welcome Center would need to be working outside of what I consider to be the regular work day, and on the weekends and things like that. But indoor community meeting spaces, are we still thinking about things of this, and so, as I say, there are a lot of aspects to this that it seemed to me were asking questions that to me really didn't have a lot to do with the programmatic work for the people of the city of Franklin city government and everything, and what would need to be here. As I say, many of the other things, but whenever they were asking them to rate some things, that seemed to me like they were asking questions that they wanted to get your answers on something they were interested in. I don't know who made the questions up, but I'm just saying, more than just asking, what do you think is important? And so that part I have been wondering about on this, but also to say here, whenever you're talking about, they mention modern office design, and I can understand some aspects of that, but we don't want the same kind of office that you see out in Cool Springs, where they have a lot of modern office buildings and everything, and I don't think that's the same kind of thing that should be here right in the center of town.
Well, think about the interior, not the exterior.
Right, okay.
Okay, how offices are laid out and interface with each other, not so much whether it's a glass facade like you see at Nissan. We're not talking about that. We're talking about how departments interact with each other, the type of space employees have, and how that works together.
Well, whenever I was looking at some of these pictures, though, they had really big open space, and as I say, I'm still wondering about the monumental stair too, because I see that you're going to be using up where you could have another floor up there that could be used for additional office or something like that. And I think that those kinds of things might want to be thought about. You know, that maybe some things that look quite attractive to some people might not be very efficient uses of your floor space. That maybe I should say it.
And this next, what we're deciding on, what we're voting on to pay for, this $1.3 million, is going to allow us, and I'm going to beat the drum with you, is that the exterior and the interior needs to fit Franklin. But right now, we have to decide if we're going to spend that money to be able to sit here, and I think we'll need 2 or 3 more of these special sessions to talk about the design, because it's so important. So your points are well taken.
As I say, I still want to go back to another thing they're talking. They said they want more. The employees said they want more daylight but have security, and I am very concerned about, you know, at some place I think they were talking about making the parking garage secure for employees and everything. But then, what does that mean the other however many hours of the day? Are they going to be available like the parking garages that we have now, when anybody can go up?
I think
into-
the architects addressed some of that security. Apparently, some of the people on the architectural team are security specialists.
Exactly.
That the design is going to be specific as far as security, is what I remember.
We in,
Well, let me just say that I think I mentioned to someone before. Last week, I read where on the Vanderbilt campus, they had 3 attacks, physical attacks on people and everything. And it was reminding me that there are a lot of places where, unfortunately, you may need a security person around or something like that. But, I happen to know somebody personally that was in a garage in Nashville years ago and got attacked. And fortunately, somebody came along and, helped.
Go ahead and finish making your points, if you would, Alderman
okay.
Peterson, so we can get some other comments.
Right, but I guess the other thing that I want to also say is I still want to see, and I want to go to some places. Apparently, a lot of you have looked at some specific information and everything about things, but I want to look in the 231 building at the basement there, because Clyde and I have both said that and I've read that was built in 1974, that building, and they used to have a basement there that had, huge room for people to have kind of meetings. That's right, meeting rooms and everything like that. And they had water problems, and they had to close it. And I do remember many years ago, someone that I knew that was a hydrologist said that he had investigated someplace between here and the river for somebody to build something, and he had found that the water level was right close to the ground, right here in some places, and I think that was the
Well,
problem.
I think that'd be a good visit over there.
I do too.
Yeah.
I mean,
But I do know that they have done drillings on this property as far as trying to locate, whatever y'all are trying to locate, water.
Right. But
So-
I would like to go down
Yeah.
in the to look at that.
We can make that happen.
Yeah. But again, to say, mainly, I'm also thinking about the outside appearance.
Sure.
But also, on the inside, I want to make sure that we're having something that is attractive but not extravagant. Thank you.
Did you want to make another comment, Alderman Potts?
I actually had a question.
Is that your later comments?
No, this is one I was kind of waiting to see if it would develop, and I actually wanted to ask Michael a question. Because you're present, sorry. I wanted to ask Michael a question, and it could be addressed by anybody, but, as we sit here and we're circling back to, the discussion, which is, are we going with option 1 or option 3? And if we put those back onto the screen and we're looking at that, we said that, it's possible for us to address financially option 3 right now. Yet, I think we all agree that, as has been shared earlier, this corridor that we have leading into the square is so important, and we don't want to just halfway do it. So from a financial standpoint, whether it's it's all us, just City of Franklin for option 1, or if it's a combination of public and private, have there been discussions about that? And if so, what kind of mix would be recommended to hit that number?
You need $32 million.
Bottom line.
That's it.
Yeah.
So can you generate $32 million from some other, whether it's a private user or another public partner or whatever in that space, can you generate that? Because, we've got other projects and we want to maintain that $20 million kind of cushion because we know costs can escalate or other things can come up and you want to have some capacity for that. So it's really about can you generate that with confidence? We are in a weird time, folks. I mean, office space is being used differently. We have a vacancy rate in Franklin I've never seen in the 13 years I've been here. So it just, people are rethinking how they use space, and I think that's part of what makes me a little bit hesitant to jump all the way in on option 1. We got a 20% occupancy rate, vacancy rate in Franklin right now,
Which is amazing.
which we've never seen.
And I talked to some real estate folks,
Yeah.
and downtown is a niche market too. So I think it's, and when I talk to those real estate folks, there's a huge demand for office down here. So I think that point well taken in Cool Springs.
I don't know. I don't know
I don't
about
know
that.
either.
I can't speak to
Yeah, I
that
don't know
exactly.
either, but I think-
I think it depends on what you're looking for and how that fits.
And how it goes for it.
We'd have to really think about that, the nature of that space and how it fits those needs and the size of that and the types of entities that might use it. And you're talking a swing of what's the square footage, around 30,000 square feet. Yeah, so how do you allocate that and what could that generate? That's a tough one. I mean, it's a crystal ball kind of situation, honestly. So we're trying to assess this with the priority being the city function and seeing how we move forward
And I
from
would
there.
say
And building in
$20
some
million.
flexibility in the
It's
future.
really a $20 million swing, $22 million. Because if we're not doing it's a $22 million.
The $9 million, if you
pull that
those
out, like as recommended,
Yeah.
if we pull that out and just for 30,000 more square feet, it's $22 million more dollars. So the costs are in this in the square footage we're building, the parking garage, and the infrastructure we're doing to do it. Much marginally, the dollar per square foot is much cheaper for the last right now, and it's only going to get exponentially more.
Yeah. Well, we've
Alderman
never really
Hanson,
asked.
you've been very patient.
I am
and
ready
you've
to
been
go.
waving your hand
I've got
at me,
lists.
So I'm
To
going to
your-
recognize
to
you.
your, to your leasing of office space, Patrick, there is zero demand. I'm trying to do commercial leases down here, and you can't get commercial office tenants. The demand for retail and other uses is through the roof at any price point. The best way to do this is to go ahead and do the full build, to monetize it for the public-private, do a master lease on retail space attached to this building, because retail brings the most amount of money. If we do a master lease to a quality outside subject, then we're guaranteed X number of dollars over X number of years in incremental phases. You do your master lease based on square footage, and then you escalate it over the years, so you're guaranteed more payment that way, and you know what you're going to get no matter what, and they're on the hook whether they lease the space or not. So you're going to have continual revenue flow from that. The cost per square foot is $949 per square foot on the $78,500 and $919.62 on the $115,000. But on a master lease, some of this retail space is going in excess of $60 a foot. So there would have to be a profit margin built in, but also future projection, because we are really low on retail space downtown. So that could help us with the bond payment, with how much we have to borrow, with continued revenue streams. But at some point, we may need that space, so we would reserve part of that space for expansion, but we'd still have our lovely landscape and footprint that would continue on through the entrance corridor. But I really hate to see us miss out on the low bond rates, the interest rates, the cost to build, even though it's almost twice what it was, then it'll be twice what it is today in 5 years, 7 years. So I think it behooves us, and right now, Ann, we're just picking out the style of our house that we want. We haven't gotten to go to the design center and pick our granite and backsplash yet. That's the fun part. That comes next. We're just picking out our elevation and which style home we want right now. So that's really my comments. I will say I cannot support a green roof because we can't even take care of the one we have at the police station. So what makes us think we can even take care of 2 or 3 over here? So I just can't even be behind that. We can't do that. But that was really it. But I think we've absolutely got to do a master lease with retail to monetize this to help pay back the citizens.
Can you
I
give
need
those
to.
numbers again? Those square footage numbers?
Yeah. Okay.
What was that again?
For the 78,500 square feet, it's $949.04. For 115,700 square feet, it's $919.62.
Negligible.
Per square foot.
Yeah.
Including the parking deck, by the way. That's
It's the whole
Yeah.
shebang.
I need to
Yeah,
recognize
Great.
Christine.
I just wanted to give a little bit of background on how the financing model, it's something that I think this is pertinent, is that the financing model assumes that all of the debt is qualified as tax-exempt debt. And tax-exempt debt, the cheapest debt that the city of Franklin can issue is what we refer to as fixed-rate tax-exempt debt issued under our general obligation bond rating, which is a AAA rating. And we've used that several times in recent years. And that is the cheapest debt that we can possibly get. And that debt, per IRS regulations, comes with a lot of promises and a lot of strings to it. One of the promises, and for as long as that debt is outstanding, is that if we issue tax-exempt debt, that project will be used for governmental purposes. And if you have any thought about changing that governmental purpose, then that debt can become taxable if it meets that what's called it's a 10% threshold, and that's where we have very good bond counsel here that would come in and advise us on exactly when we've hit that threshold. But I want to just give you that background that really the vast majority of the projects that you've bonded for in the past, you've never even considered during that 20-year payback period that you would use it for anything but governmental. And so when I'm asked to certify that this is going to be used for a governmental purpose, whoever succeeds me will have to make sure that if that ever changes, if the board ever wants to change that, even if it's in year 18 of 20, we have to go through the process of perhaps even refinancing that debt as taxable debt. Now, the difference, I've been asked before, what's the difference of taxable versus tax-exempt debt? The first thing you always look at is what is the value of that tax exemption? I think right now the highest marginal tax rate is 37%. Now, does that mean that it's exactly a 37% difference? It probably is not, but there's a value to that tax exemption. That's why an investor is willing to pay. They're willing to receive a lower interest rate from you, the government, because they're getting the benefit on the other side of that tax exemption. So there's some relationship there to what the marginal tax rates are. There's also there's different investors who buy taxable debt compared to tax exempt. So what's the supply and demand in that market at the time? But I can tell you from my experience, I've been here 5 years now, the market for the demand for the city of Franklin's AAA GO paper is very high. We do competitive processes for all of our bond issues. We receive lots of bids, lots of interest. This is a really strong tax exempt credit. So If you want to do something that's a private use, we certainly can, bring in bond counsel and evaluate what percentage would have to be taxable, what strings you're looking at. But there will be additional carrying costs if you have to issue taxable debt versus the entire project being considered a governmental purpose.
Can you divide that up, though? I mean, could you do part of City Hall and do it non-taxable, and then the other
You'd have to have,
section?
yeah.
That's where bond
You'd
counsel
have
would
to have
advise.
some kind of hybrid
I
mix.
You
think-
would
I think
do
we-
allocations between the different uses.
I think we're doing ourselves a disservice if we don't look at that.
So-
Because I think
Yeah.
the part of the whole City Hall, and then we could do that, which is non-taxable, and do the other section, and look at the bonds and bring in some advice on that, so we know what we're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, you would have to finance differently, as
Both
Christine laid out
sections.
for you. The other consideration, and I have been an advocate for retail space in this building.
I agree.
It was not well received in the public feedback, I will tell you that. It was very negatively received. I like the idea because of the activity, and I do see the value there, but it will change the design concept significantly. My understanding of most retailers is they want to be on your first floor. They're not really interested in our third floor office space. Okay, so you'd have to really reconfigure some of that and how that would work to create some of that shell retail space. You can do it, but it's going to be a different type of use and how you think about that. So that's a pretty significant shift in terms of your vision of how you're going to lay out that first floor and those elements. Certainly can be done, but there's a reason we ended up where we were because of the feedback we got on that concept. And I will tell you, as a person that pushed for that and thought that was a great idea.
So I asked I asked multiple Third Avenue residents because you told me that before, and I appreciated that, and I would like for us to find that feedback specifically and better understand what that was like, because I know, and I didn't see it in the presentation, and I talked to various, we could ask the mayor, he's on Third Avenue, but I didn't hear it from them. So I'd like to find out where that was from, because it's legitimate. I trust you, but I just want to find out where that was
And I have some of the
coming
same question too, that if it was said broadly enough, commercial space or whatever, if certain people just assumed you're talking about bars. I don't want another bar or something like, somebody just may have jumped to a conclusion when a broad term is used. And we could refine that to, do you mean more service elements like a coffee shop or a gift shop or those kind of things,
And the
or
Downtown
art
Neighborhood
gallery, or
Association did a survey, and I think that would be a great place to start with, like, even I could do informal with the DNA of what would that look like, or how would you, and get a quick response, because that's, I don't want that to stop us from exploring it.
Right.
Well, and also
I'm just trying to frame how we got to where we are.
Yeah, but how many people did we do a survey with based on how many residents we have? I know it's a great response,
Right.
but I mean,
I'm
it's
just
kind of
kinda-
like Family Feud. Survey of 100 says. I mean, that doesn't mean it's the gospel.
Yeah,
so.
we had somewhere between 650 and 700 residents give us some form of feedback on the online survey elements. Can't tell you that that's, gets everything, but it is part of what we got in it, and we respect that, but, that's part of what we need guidance on if you want us to explore that more fully, and what does that look like in a schematic design option, even.
Again, wonderful conversation and thoughts. And as we talked about, or I presented, and Eric talked about a few weeks back, is that option 3 provides us that flexibility should you choose us to go forward with it, because we can work with the consultant to look at leasable space. And we can also ask them to incorporate some of that time into the schematic design, while we also look at the financing element that you brought out. And we can expand that schematic design. Will there be some lost costs? Yes. However, it does keep us going forward, because We don't expect inflation to be pushing 7% as it did this past year, or 3 or 4%, but there will be inflation. And we'll recoup any lost cause as we work through those details, and any others you give us direction on, in the coming weeks and months. But at least we can get a professional services agreement to start moving forward and look at this with the consultant's help. And the other thing, I gotta say it, because I don't want anybody to lose sight of our executive team here. Project costs are of the utmost priority of us and the consultant. The consultant has a construction cost estimator. We're gonna value engineer it as we keep going forward as the city team, using and leveraging our experience. But we also are benchmarking, as you saw a little bit about that in the presentation that we shared with you, to make sure we're getting value. So I just want to provide that assurance. It's going to be a big price tag, but it's going to be a value price tag.
Alderman Brown.
Figure I might as well get in this conversation somewhere. So, you know, my original inclination was option 3. You know, look, we're all trying to read a crystal ball here. You know, in a lot of ways, I hope we're not sitting in the same position relative to pandemics in 5 years' time, but we also didn't think we'd be sitting here 2 years' time. I will tell you, there's office space all around me on Main Street, and it's not going anywhere. And I do think the way people have worked in the past is going to change. Does that mean there's fewer cubicles and more meeting rooms? Does that mean there's more hotel rooms and fewer meeting rooms? I don't know. What I do know is I don't know that the city needs to be involved in being a meeting house. I don't know that the city needs to be involved in having its own coffee shops and that kind of thing. Whether or not there is value in us leasing space, my concern would be us taking on the job of landlord and managing that. I do still have concerns about economic downturn at some point. I'm not a pessimist by nature, but I don't know that we sustain forever. Now we're on the hook not only for our own use and our own building, our own costs, but we're now landlords of additional space that we have to now manage should something happen in the future. So we start to sort of layer on risk when we're when we're ahead of our own skis here, when we're managing the expectations or the needs of other people beyond ourselves. However, having looked at option 3 again, having removed all of that and just the prospect of a yard out there, I'm with you that to me does not fit an expectation of sort of how we should activate this 3rd Avenue square. So at the point, though, that we start adding gardens back in, or we start doing something on that space, that we're not just staring at the end of a building until some future state, well, now we're getting back up into a range where we're suddenly closing the gap again. And to your point, our dollar in on the next 20,000 square foot or whatever is not as significant. So where I guess I'm landing today in this discussion is I would love to see that. I would like to have that conversation. I would like to understand what that debt would look like, what that would cost us. Can we do the math? Can we get there from here? If at the end of the day we can't make up a $20 million, $22 million number plus whatever the debt calculation would be different, then I think we need to not take that risk and put that risk on our citizens. Outside of that, I think to really think about how we want to create a historic building. I'm completely with you, Alderman Peterson, on that. On this square that fulfills the full square, allows us to work. What we do with all the extra space we would have from that, I couldn't begin to tell you. I think that's the hardest part, to build a building that we wouldn't fill, at least right out of the gate. So I'd love to see the math. I'd love to do that. If we do option 3, we can't just leave it a yard. I feel like we got to add some stuff back in and make that evaluation. And then if we do go with option 1, which I could be in favor of, lose the green roof, that kind of stuff, I think we could shrink that number down. I think we could lose some of the expense that we've got within the space, do the value engineering. But at the end of the day, really concerned with managing and landlording for other businesses is my only concern.
You're not under a master lease. Somebody else does all
Okay, then that would alleviate some concern.
Vice Mayor?
I'm going to propose that I ask the last question because I really need to stand up. How did we go about stealing the parking from Pull Tight Theater? Where did it go? It became a garden. Somebody tell me that.
The Pull Tight Theater has a lease with us.
Okie dokie.
Okay, and there's some history to that garden that goes back. And they have access to the parking on the site because we have a lease with them. And that's how we would use that space.
Vice Mayor, that's why you're Vice Mayor. And my closing comment is,
Mayor?
go ahead. I've got Alderman Berger and then you.
Okay. Eric, you made one interesting comment about the fact that you were looking for retail and the fact that you thought it got shot down based upon the surveys that you did and the public input and all that. I don't think I've ever heard you say that before. Have you?
Oh, they have.
They may have. They may have. But to us, the ones that have to vote on the budget, the ones that have to vote on the money, the ones that have to look out and sort of stick our necks out as far as what we're doing here. I think this has been by far the best we've had. Because I hope that you heard, and if I heard correctly, there's a greater interest on our part in retail and this property being property tax generating, sales tax generating, and something other than a building sitting down here that I've said in the past that I don't think that we are looking correctly at the use of it. I think we'll have 210 employees down here maybe, but I don't believe the public is going to use this bill because I think that what we've done over the past 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, technology or whatever, we've weaned them from using City Hall unless it's some of those magnificent bathrooms we're getting ready to put in. But that's all, that's it. There's nobody, it'd be interesting, Eric, to know how many people come in that door, or this one over here that are actually doing business on a daily basis. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. With someone here, because I know, you don't pay any bills here. You can pay them wherever it is. You may come down and get a yard permit for $5. I do that occasionally. I hadn't had a yard sale lately, but I think that the comments, and I would like for you to briefly say what you thought you heard from us tonight.
Well,
You want to look at a public?
I'm going to let him conclude after Alderman Berger
Okay.
says something,
Okay.
and then he can give his snippet. And I personally like the stairway. I never got to say that, but anyway, go ahead, Alderman Berger.
Well, I like the stairway too. Actually, all I had was my point of order. I never really did get my comments, so I'll try to be real fast here because I know we need to wrap up. But, let's stop for a second and just say to ourselves, what are we doing? We always say technology, technology, technology. People don't come and pay bills here at City Hall anymore. You're absolutely right, Clyde. Things have changed. Office has changed. The way we do business has changed. True. But what's never going to change, and if it does, we're all doomed as a human race, is the heart of the human experience and relationships. City Hall has always been the heart of a city. It's always been the heart. It's been the heart of the First Amendment, people speaking out on town square. So let's not lose sight of this stuff. If we do, we're no better than I don't know who. It just bothers me greatly. We always say, hey, we're Franklin, we're special, we do different things. But you look around us and you know where we're headed. We're not in a real good place in this world right now. And we have to stop and say, are we all just going to go home and stay in our cubicles and never speak to everybody and never come to City Hall and never go to work and never go to our office buildings again? Honestly, I don't think. We're human beings. I don't think we're ever going to get to that spot. If we do, we cease being human. So I think we have to bring that element into this. Now, there are city halls. You got Independence, PA, you do, but you have Sugar Land City Hall in Texas. You have College Park in Maryland, Bessemer, and Canby, Ohio, in Oregon. They have retail. They have restaurants in their city hall, attached to the city hall, in the area, in the footprint. I think I'm with Clyde. We should generate some money here. Maybe we don't need this whole space. I, for one, would like to build out the whole thing and be done with it, because it's never going to be any less expensive. It's going to be very expensive. But maybe we don't need all that space. So to be good stewards, we build out and we do the option, what is it, 3? And we be good stewards of that, and maybe we to have tax generating area that we can build out and lease out and do some things with. Gabrielle brought up some really good points tonight. I think we need to consider those things. But there are city halls that do use their city halls and their buildings in a different way. The modern design, we talked about modern design. Of course, the outside's got to look like it fits in Franklin, but if we're working, we're not working in a traditional office anymore. That's gone, because it doesn't fit with technology, it doesn't fit with interaction, it doesn't fit with collaboration, it doesn't fit. The cubicles, the small offices do not fit in how we do business today. It's not fit for years. So that's changed a lot, so we better be modern inside, and we better set it up correctly that way so people can actually function. But tax generation is really important to me. The other thing is the bonds and how we would look in if it's non-taxable versus taxable. I really want us to look into that. I think we need to take a good look at that. You need to bring us some information so we can start making good decisions on that. And then we get to all this other stuff, the peripheral, picking out the whatever we need to pick out. Everyone's going to have a different opinion. Some people are going to like high ceilings. Some people don't like high ceilings. But I would say, we need a major staircase, because people don't need to be getting on elevators all the time. They are sitting at their seats too long. They need to be walking up and down stairs. You need to walk in City Hall and be able to shoot upstairs and not wait on an elevator. You need that interaction. You need that availability. But also, if we look at an open space, let's be wise about it. Let's look and say, what's the cost of an open area? How about the heat? How do we bring the heat down? Do we need fans to bring the heat down? There are all sorts of things that we need to be talking about when you get into the architectural aspects of it, but that's for a later date. That's all my comments.
You get to finish it up, Eric.
Well, first of all, speaking of being in your seats too long, I get that, so I'll be as quick as I can.
I know.
Well, I've been asked to respond, so I'm going to do it as quick as I can. What I really heard is you all saying what I think we've all had in our hearts too, is that we get one chance to do this, and we want to do it right. I think there is some give and take on the prioritization of how you want to use valuable space, how that works in public versus the market value of it. And so part of what we look at is how do we achieve that value, and what that value proposition is between the space we need to operate, serve the community, work together and work with the community, but also the value we have being on the square, the importance of the square, both in terms of fit, how it looks and feels right, like it belongs here, but also the vibrancy and vitality that we expect of our downtown, and that we're going to be additive of that along 3rd Avenue. So that's what I hear. I think the value of better understanding how retail and restaurant space might be integrated. But again, there's trade-offs there. The understanding the cost and financing implications that will drive costs up, and how that factors in, and how we possibly close a gap to do and build more that has a longer lifespan to it in an uncertain world.
Yep.
I think that's where we are.
Always in a certain world.
See you in
Retime that? I should have timed it.
13, 5 after 7.
Thank you.